Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt like you didn't belong? Like your whole presence was a mistake, but you stayed anyway? Welcome back to Mr. Charles' Stories, where real emotions meet unforgettable decisions. Today's story begins with one quiet woman, one dangerous night, and a secret that would stay hidden for 5 long years. If you've ever kept a life-altering truth to yourself, or if you've been the one left without answers, this one's for you. Stick around to the end, and if you feel something, drop a comment, like, or share with someone who needs. This reminder, the people who seem quiet often carry the loudest truth. Naomi Evers knew the second those mirrored elevator doors opened that she'd made a mistake. The hallway on the 45th floor wasn't like the rest of the building. No generic carpet, no soft jazz, just glass, steel and silence, so sharp it felt expensive. She clutched her design folder to her chest like it could protect her, and stepped onto cold marble floors in heels she hadn't broken in yet. Every sound echoed. She had one job: deliver final fabric swatches to Mrs. Devereux's assistant, get the signature, and leave. 5 minutes. That's what it should have been. But no one mentioned the bachelor party. No one said the entire top floor had been reserved. No one warned her that the future groom, Caspian Devereux, would be standing in the hallway, jacket slung, over his shoulder, tie undone, glass in hand, looking nothing like the man she'd seen in magazines. Caspian was 34, sleek watch, dark hair always combed back like he was born to wear a tuxedo. He was the kind of man who didn't need to introduce himself. His last name did that for him. Everyone in Chicago knew the Devereux family, real estate, old money, impossible expectations. And everyone knew Caspian was set to marry Camille Astor that weekend. Political royalty, poised and polished. Their union was a deal, not a dream. But it looked good in photographs. Naomi wasn't part of that world. She worked out of a studio above a bakery in South Chicago, designing nurseries and wine bars for clients who couldn't afford downtown rates. And yet, here she was, staring at the most watched bachelor in the city. She should have turned around. Should have taken the elevator back down and emailed the files instead. But Caspian looked up, saw her, and for some reason he said, "Wait." His voice wasn't loud. It was tired, not like someone partying, like someone trying to avoid one. "I think your party's that way," Naomi said, nodding toward the muffled music around the corner. He gave a tight smile. "Do you know what's up here on this floor?" he asked. She hesitated. "No, nothing." "That's the point." He motioned toward the glass wall ahead. "Ever seen the city from this high up?" Naomi shook her head. He stepped closer and opened the door to the rooftop lounge. No cameras, no noise, just the skyline bleeding into the dark sky and lights below like glitter spilled across concrete. "Come look," he said. And even though she shouldn't have, Naomi walked through. They didn't say much at first. He poured 2 glasses of something gold. She held hers, didn't sip. Caspian stared at the lights like he was trying to find something he'd lost. "This doesn't feel like a celebration," he said after a while. "It feels like a funeral." Naomi glanced sideways. "That's a strange thing to say before your wedding." He gave a short laugh, no humor in it. "That's a strange thing to say, period." She didn't ask what he meant. She didn't ask why he looked like a man grieving something no one else noticed. And that silence, that was the start of everything. Because Caspian Devereux, who had built an empire on logic, wealth, and clean choices, chose to speak in a way he didn't with anyone else. And Naomi, who had learned to listen more than speak, didn't interrupt. They stood like that for what felt like an hour, until he asked, "Do you believe in mistakes that change your life?" She answered softly, "I believe some moments were never accidents in the first place." It didn't happen with music. No slow lean-in, no romantic breeze. Caspian turned toward her, still holding the glass, and said, "You're the first person tonight who didn't lie to me." Then he kissed her. Once. Then again, slower. And Naomi didn't stop him. Her head told her to leave. But her heart, it whispered, "Stay." So she did. Naomi didn't remember walking back inside. She remembered the view. The silence. The way Caspian had looked at her, like he couldn't breathe right, like something in his life was closing in, and she had become the only open door. And then, the sound of the elevator behind her, one of his groomsmen laughing, a shout about shots lined up and cigars waiting. She stepped back, fast, pulled away. Caspian didn't try to stop her. He just stood still, like part of him already knew he'd ruined something. She placed the untouched glass down on a nearby table, murmured, "You have a flight to catch." Then she walked out. The elevator was already open. She pressed the button and didn't turn around. And Caspian? He didn't call her name. Downstairs, Naomi barely made it to her car before her hands started shaking. She sat there for 10 minutes staring at the steering wheel, heart pounding. Then she took out her phone. No texts, no missed calls. She hadn't expected one. Still, she waited. 30 minutes passed. She opened her gallery, deleted the photo of the penthouse ceiling lights, deleted the screenshot of the skyline, deleted the address pin Caspian had sent earlier with the simple message, "Top floor." "Don't ask anyone." She closed her eyes. Then she drove home. The next morning, Naomi saw the wedding photos. Italy, sunlight on stone steps, Camille in a custom gown, expression calm, smile curated. Caspian stood beside her in a white tux, hand resting lightly on her waist. Naomi stared at the screen. Then she turned it off. That was all the closure she'd ever get. 3 days later, the nausea began. She didn't panic at first. She assumed it was stress, or bad takeout, or maybe guilt catching up to her body. But by the third morning of brushing her teeth and gagging at the smell of mint, she knew. She bought the test at a pharmacy across town. She took it in silence. 2 pink lines, clear, sharp. She stared for a long time. Then she whispered, "Of course." Naomi didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. She didn't scream into her pillow or rip up her sketches. She just sat on the edge of her bed with the test in one hand and her other palm resting flat against her stomach. A few days later, she told her mother. Her mother made tea, sat with her, and didn't ask for details. Eventually, she said quietly, "You don't owe him a thing. He made his choice." And Naomi nodded, not because she agreed, but because she was tired of everything needing to be debated. The first trimester was rough. She worked through it, took on small clients, adjusted her hours. She sketched nursery concepts for strangers while quietly building a folder called Personal Ideas No One Ever Saw. By month 5, she was showing. She started layering baggy coats and carrying large tote bags. Clients stopped offering her wine during consultations. No one asked, but everyone noticed. Naomi kept working, kept walking, kept breathing. Because what else was there to do? She chose the name in month 7, River, not because it was trendy or poetic or Pinterest approved, but because this child had come into her life like water, uninvited, unstoppable, and quietly powerful. She knew the child was Caspian's from the beginning. There was no one else. And even if there had been, she would have known. Some truths sit in your bones before they ever touch your skin. Labor came early, 37 weeks. She was alone in her apartment when the contractions started. She called an Uber, teeth clenched, heart racing. The driver didn't ask questions. He helped her into the ER like she was a neighbor, not a stranger. And when River came, squirming, crying, perfect, Naomi wept for the first time. Not for Caspian. Not for the night that led to this. She cried because her body had done something incredible. Quietly, without applause or backup. She cried because her son was here. And he had Caspian's eyes. River was 5 pounds, 11 ounces. He had a tiny birthmark behind his left ear and a tendency to fall asleep when Naomi hummed off-key lullabies. He didn't look like her. Not at all. But she loved him instantly. And that terrified her. Because love meant risk. And Naomi had already lost too much to bet on anyone again. They went home 3 days later. She set up the crib in the corner of her room. She taped a note to the fridge for the neighbor, who sometimes helped with groceries, and then she started again. No fanfare, no announcements, just quiet, steady love. And no one, not even Caspian, knew the boy existed. Naomi didn't keep photos on the wall, not of River, not of her family, not even of her own childhood. The frames she used for clients were always ornate, polished, perfect. But in her home, the walls stayed bare. Not cold, just undecorated, like she was waiting for something. Maybe certainty, maybe peace, maybe the moment when she no longer had to pretend none of this still hurt. When River was 3 months old, Naomi returned to work. She didn't make a grand announcement. She sent quiet emails, followed up with old clients, took on a modest project, renovating a reading nook for a family-owned cafe. She strapped River to her chest during consultations and gently bounced him while reviewing paint samples. Clients noticed. No one judged. Most simply asked his name. She'd say River, and they'd smile like they understood something deeper about her. No one asked about the father, but sometimes Naomi could tell they wanted to. River grew fast. At 9 months, he was standing. By 1, walking. By 18 months, he was climbing onto anything not bolted down. Naomi baby-proofed her entire apartment with pool noodles, tension gates, and stubborn faith. Every time River fell and got up, she smiled quietly. "Strong like your name," she'd whisper. Sometimes he babbled back, not understanding. But she believed one day he would. Caspian's name came up again when River was 2, not directly. But on the cover of a business magazine, Naomi passed in the grocery store checkout line. There he was, looking the same, tailored, unreadable. Next to him stood Camille. Perfect posture, chin slightly lifted. But Naomi noticed something different in the photo. There was space between them. They looked like 2 figures from different paintings forced onto one canvas. She kept walking. At night, when River was asleep, Naomi worked. She designed high-end spaces with low-end budgets, accepted clients by referral only, built a wait list without trying. By the time River turned 3, she moved the studio out of her apartment and into a rented corner space in Bronzeville, above a boutique florist, down the block from a jazz bar. Her landlord, Mrs. Branson, always greeted her with fresh lavender and stories about her grandkids. "You're building something real," she told Naomi one morning, as River stacked blocks on the rug. "Most people chase noise. You build quietly." Naomi smiled at that. She didn't need noise. She needed peace. And River gave her that. Still, some nights were hard. Nights when River got sick, and Naomi stayed up checking his temperature every hour. Nights when her back ached from lifting both supplies and a toddler all day. Nights when she saw glimpses of Caspian in River's expressions, the way he tilted his head, the calm way he looked at things, like he was measuring the world before reacting. Those nights, Naomi sat by the window with a blanket and whispered the same thing into the dark. "You don't need anyone who doesn't show up for you." She wasn't sure if she was talking to River or herself. By the time River turned 4, he was drawing skyscrapers, not cartoon ones, real ones, with windows, elevators, balconies. He liked lines. He liked balance. He'd sit on the floor with Naomi's old drafting pencils and sketch for an hour without moving. One day, he held up a drawing and said, "This is where I'll live when I'm big." Naomi looked closer. It was a tall building with a rooftop and tiny people drawn on top. "What are they doing?" she asked. Looking at the sky, River said. She swallowed hard. "Do you like buildings?" she asked. "I like the tall ones," he said. "They make the world look small." She nodded. She didn't say anything else. But she felt something tighten in her chest. The world was about to get small again, and she had no idea what was coming. Naomi hadn't followed Caspian's life, not on purpose. But when you lived in Chicago, his name was hard to miss. Billboards, business journals, mentions during networking events. People still talked about the Devereaux-Astor merger like it was a corporate fairy tale. A perfect match. She knew better. It was a deal, a headline, A power move dressed in designer lace. Camille was beautiful, no doubt, educated, poised, politically bred. But in every photo, she never once looked at Caspian like she felt anything. That kind of love, the kind Naomi had tasted once, briefly, in silence on a rooftop. It couldn't be faked. And it couldn't be forced. River turned 5 in March. Naomi didn't throw a party. He didn't like big crowds. Instead, they spent the day at the City Museum, walking hand in hand between dinosaur bones and airplane models. He asked questions non-stop. She answered every one. Later that night, she tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and turned off the light. Before she closed the door, he asked, "Why don't I have a daddy?" Naomi froze. It wasn't the first time the question had come, but it was the first time he said it like it mattered. She sat on the edge of the bed and touched his hand. "You have me," she said gently. "I know," he whispered. "But, did you ever?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to lie, wanted to protect him from the pain of absence, but she also knew silence could grow into confusion. "Yes," she said. "A long time ago." River nodded once, like he understood more than a 5-year-old should, and Naomi felt the old ache return. Not regret, but the knowledge that truth doesn't stay buried forever. 2 weeks later, Naomi received an invitation. A luxury children's hospital in downtown Chicago was seeking a full redesign for their new therapy wing. They had reviewed her portfolio. They wanted her to present. She reread the email 3 times. It was a career-changing opportunity, high visibility, real funding, press coverage. She should have been thrilled. Instead, she felt a knot in her stomach. Because the hospital board was funded by one of Chicago's largest real estate development firms, and the name at the bottom of the approval committee, Caspian Devereaux. She debated, declining, told herself she didn't need the exposure, told herself the risk wasn't worth the emotional whiplash. But then she looked at River, curled up on the floor drawing again, and realized something. She had spent 5 years hiding, and maybe it was time to stop. She wore navy, sleek, simple, no distractions. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun. Her heels clicked against the hospital's polished lobby floor like punctuation. She checked in at the front desk, collected her visitor badge, and followed the assistant to the presentation hall. 10 board members sat in a semicircle. Some looked bored, others mildly curious, and, in the center, Caspian. His expression didn't shift when he saw her. He sat back in his chair, arms crossed. Quiet. Naomi didn't flinch. She stood, opened her portfolio, and began. She didn't mention the past. She didn't let her voice shake. She talked about healing spaces, about light, texture, comfort. She showed renderings of art walls designed by patients, sensory rooms with calming palettes, reading zones shaped like tree houses. She spoke like the woman she had become, not the one who once walked out of a penthouse before dawn. When she finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then someone clapped. Another followed. One of the doctors nodded and said, "This feels like something that belongs here." Naomi nodded once. She didn't look at Caspian. Not yet. After the presentation, she collected her samples and turned to leave. But as she neared the elevator, she heard a voice. "Naomi." She paused, turned slowly. Caspian stood 10 feet away, hands in his pockets. "You look different." She offered a slight smile. "That happens when 5 years go by." He flinched, just a little. They stood in silence. Then he said, "Did we ever have anything to say?" Naomi's eyes were steady. She didn't answer. She just stepped into the elevator and let the doors close. If someone who once broke your heart stood in front of you 5 years later, would you say something? Would you walk away? Would you forgive? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story has you thinking, hit that like button, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories. The past isn't always done with us, even when we think we're done with it. Naomi kept her phone on silent for 2 weeks. She didn't want to hear from anyone, especially not from the hospital board. Not yet. She had already decided if they passed on her, it was fine. She'd survived worse. But 3 weeks after the pitch, she got a call from one of the pediatric directors. They offered her the contract. 12-week rollout. Full design lead. Site visits, progress walkthroughs, press launch. It was the kind of project that could shift the entire course of her business. Naomi accepted it with a steady voice and a racing heart. She didn't ask if Caspian signed off. She didn't want to know. By then, River had memorized the train routes across downtown. He liked the Green Line best. Said it felt like flying when it crossed the bridges. Naomi tried to keep life normal for him, even while her workload tripled. She hired an assistant to help with the studio, rearranged her project list, and spent nights sketching designs with River sleeping across her lap. One night, as she was shading in soft curves for a therapy room's sensory ceiling, River looked up from his crayons. "Do you think my daddy likes buildings too?" Naomi didn't answer right away. She looked down at her son's latest drawing, a tall structure with crayon blue windows and a tiny rooftop garden. "Yes," she said finally. "I think he does." River smiled. "Then maybe we like the same things." Naomi didn't respond. She just hugged him tighter. Meanwhile, Caspian's marriage kept making appearances in headlines. Naomi didn't go looking for them. They found her. A news app notification here. A sidebar article during a late-night design search. Devereaux Astor appear together at fundraiser after months of split rumors. Camille looked radiant, as always. Caspian looked there. That was all Naomi saw anymore. When she looked at those pictures, he was present, but never involved. Like he'd learned how to wear skin like armor. She didn't know what that meant. Didn't care to guess. But something in her, something small and buried, wondered what kind of man he was now. And more importantly, what kind of man he was willing to become. The first on-site walkthrough happened the following week. Naomi arrived early as usual. She brought River with her, just for the first hour. His babysitter had a dentist emergency, and she couldn't risk missing the scheduled inspection. River stayed in the children's lounge down the hall, surrounded by puzzles and floor cushions. He was used to quiet environments, knew how to keep himself busy. Naomi reminded him twice to stay inside and not talk to strangers. He saluted her like a little soldier, then dove into his sketchbook. She went to work. 20 minutes into reviewing the drywall spacing with the construction lead, she heard footsteps behind her. Then a voice. "That drawing is good." Naomi turned. Caspian stood at the lounge doorway, holding River's sketch. River looked up at his mother. He asked if he could see it. "I said yes." Naomi walked forward slowly. Caspian looked at the drawing, another cityscape with thick outlines, gentle shadows, and a rooftop garden. "He's talented," he said. River smiled. "I'm 5. I'm not talented yet." Caspian chuckled softly. "You're further along than I was at 5. He looked at Naomi, something unreadable in his expression. "Is this?" Naomi stepped in front of River slightly. "His name is River," she said. "You already know who he is." Caspian blinked. Once, then again. 5, he whispered. Naomi didn't speak. He crouched slowly, coming eye level with the boy. "Do you like buildings?" he asked. River nodded. "They don't move, but they change. I like that." Caspian smiled faintly. "Me too." Naomi watched them both. Her heart felt like it was trying to leave her chest. This was real, not imagined, not delayed, not safe in theory. They were face to face, and there was no undoing it. Caspian didn't follow Naomi back into the main design hall that day. After speaking with River, he simply stood, looked at Naomi, and said quietly, "We'll talk. Not now, not here." But eventually, Naomi gave a short nod, then walked away with her clipboard held tightly in both hands, like it could keep her together if she cracked in public. She didn't speak to him again during the site visit, didn't acknowledge his presence when he stood silently during her report on pediatric lighting balance. And when she left the building, River back by her side, humming on the train home, she still hadn't decided what she was going to do about him. But one thing had changed. Caspian had seen the boy. and there was no putting that genie back in the bottle. That night, Naomi didn't sleep. She made tea, paced, opened old folders she hadn't touched in years. One labeled June 10th, deliverables. Another labeled private, unsent. Inside were design drafts for Mrs. Devereux's original project. And at the bottom, screenshots she thought she deleted. A pin from Caspian, a blurry photo of the skyline from the rooftop, a half-written message she'd never sent. I don't think I was supposed to be there, but I was. And now everything feels different. She stared at that message for a long time. Then she shut the laptop. She had a life now. She had built it from scratch with steady hands. If Caspian wanted a place in River's world, he'd have to prove himself, not with words, but with consistency. The next time they saw each other was a week later. Caspian showed up early for a walkthrough, 30 minutes before any other board member. Naomi arrived 5 minutes after that and found him in the observation room overlooking the indoor play area. He didn't speak immediately. Just watched the kids below run between foam shapes and climbing walls. "You named him River," he said eventually. Naomi didn't look at him. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Strong name." There was a long pause. Then he asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" She didn't flinch. "You got married 12 hours after you kissed me," she said. He turned to face her. "I didn't plan that night." "Neither did I," she said. "I didn't know how to undo it. I didn't ask you to." He closed his eyes. "I thought about it. After. I looked for you." Naomi crossed her arms. "Maybe you should have tried harder." Caspian didn't argue. He just nodded. Once. Then said, "I want to know him." Naomi's jaw tightened. "You don't get to say that like it's a line you rehearse. He's not a project. He's not a title. He's a boy who draws cities and cries when people leave early without saying goodbye." Caspian's voice cracked just slightly. "I'm not leaving." Naomi finally met his eyes. "Then you better mean it." River didn't ask questions when Caspian showed up again 2 days later. Naomi hadn't told him who he was. She didn't know how yet. But she let him sit across the room while River played with wooden architecture blocks. They didn't force anything. Caspian observed. River spoke occasionally. That was it. But some things started shifting. Slowly. Quietly, like steel beams settling into place. Later that week, River sat beside Naomi during lunch and asked, "Is that man going to keep coming back?" Naomi blinked. "Do you want him to?" River shrugged. "He listens." "Most people don't." Naomi folded her napkins slowly. "He might come back, yes." River thought for a moment, then nodded. "He's not loud." "That's good." Naomi didn't know whether to laugh or cry, because that's how it started all those years ago, with quiet. And now, here they were again. Different time, same silence. Only now, it had a child's voice inside it. Naomi was good at managing time. It's how she'd survived solo motherhood and kept a business alive, by knowing how to structure her days down to the minute. But Caspian showing up broke her rhythm. Not in loud ways, in subtle ones. River began asking more questions during breakfast. "Is he coming today? Why doesn't he have a picture in our hallway? Do I have to call him something?" Naomi answered carefully, truthfully, but not fully. "You don't have to call him anything," she said one morning, helping him tie his shoes. "But is he my dad?" Naomi crouched down, looked her son in the eye, and nodded. "Yes." River blinked. "Okay." And that was it, for now. But Naomi could feel the shift starting, the gap between the past and the present narrowing. Questions unspoken, answers not ready. She wasn't afraid of River knowing. She was afraid of what would come after, because knowing meant wanting, and wanting meant the possibility of being disappointed. Again, Caspian didn't press for titles or explanations. He didn't show up with lawyers or plans, didn't try to write checks or draw up contracts. He just kept showing up, twice a week at first, then more often, always to the hospital or the park nearby, never to Naomi's home. He didn't ask where she lived. He respected the space she needed. Or maybe he knew he didn't deserve more than what she allowed. He read to River, listened to him talk about buildings and puzzles, brought him books about bridges and tunnels and the way cities breathe when people move through them. It wasn't performative, it was consistent, and Naomi didn't know what to do with that. One Friday afternoon, after a project meeting, Caspian stayed back and waited for Naomi near the parking structure. She saw him leaning on a railing, hands in his pockets, tie loosened. He didn't speak first. She did. This can't be a phase. He looked up. It's not. You don't get to come into his life, make him think something's happening, and then disappear. I'm not disappearing. I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be honest. Caspian's eyes didn't waver. I was a coward before. I thought marrying Camille would fix everything expected of me. Naomi folded her arms. And did it? He exhaled. It fixed nothing. It just buried what I didn't want to face. And what's that? That I made a decision without knowing what it would cost. Naomi nodded slowly. Good, she said. Now you get to live with it. Then she walked to her car and drove away. That night, she sat by the window after River fell asleep. She didn't drink wine or scroll her phone. She just sat there with the weight of everything she hadn't said. She hadn't told him about the labor, or how she rode to the ER alone, how she almost passed out during delivery and thought for a moment, what if I don't make it? She hadn't told him River was born 3 weeks early, tiny and quiet, but with eyes wide open, like he already knew this world would demand more from him. She hadn't told him she used to whisper apologies to a newborn at night, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. She hadn't told him any of it. And maybe she wouldn't, because the real cost wasn't in the telling. It was in how much of her strength she'd had to build just to survive what he left behind. But then River started drawing differently. His buildings weren't just straight lines anymore. They had people in them. A man on the roof, a woman in the garden, a little boy looking out the window. He didn't label them. He didn't have to. Naomi saw it. The change. River wasn't wondering anymore. He was expecting, and that scared her more than anything, because children believe people stay until they don't. Saturday mornings used to be sacred, just Naomi and River. Grocery trips, library time, pancakes at the diner on 71st and Evans. No interruptions, no phone calls, no reminders of the world beyond the two of them. It was their ritual, their armor, the rhythm that said, we are okay. But now, River had started asking questions before they even left the apartment. Is he coming with us today? Naomi had ignored it the first time, brushed it off the second. By the third time, the question carried weight. She was slicing bananas for River's cereal when he asked again. This time, he didn't look up from the table. Can we invite him? He listens when I talk about bridges. You said, people who listen are good. Naomi set the knife down and turned to face him. She crouched beside his chair. I did say that. And he is trying to be good. Then why are you scared? The question hit her chest like a slow, blunt force. River didn't blink, didn't smile, just looked at her like he saw more than a 5-year-old should. Naomi opened her mouth, but no answer came. I'm not scared, she said finally, quietly. But even she didn't believe her voice. River gave a small shrug and turned back to his spoon. The truth was, she wasn't scared of Caspian. She was scared of what River might start needing from him, and what it would do to her if he left again. Caspian didn't press. He never overstepped, never arrived without checking first, never asked for more than Naomi allowed. But she noticed he was always available. If a design meeting ran long, and River needed someone to pick him up from art class, Caspian was already pulling up to the curb in his quiet black SUV. If River asked to meet for lunch on a weekday, Caspian somehow made space. No complaints, no excuse, no ego. Naomi watched from a distance. A second-floor museum balcony, a doorway, a glass reflection. She didn't trust it, not yet. but she couldn't ignore the look on River's face whenever Caspian walked in. It was hope. Raw, young, unprotected. The kind of hope that would shatter if touched the wrong way. Naomi had spent years shielding River from that kind of disappointment. Now it was walking into her studio twice a week with sketchbooks and sandwiches. One Thursday evening, she arrived at her studio late after a contractor meeting ran over. River was supposed to be there already, coloring quietly with the sitter. But when she walked in, she found something else. Caspian, sitting cross-legged on the floor, helping River tape together a cardboard skyline. Laughter floated up from them like music, soft, real, warm. River looked up. "We're building Chicago, but better." Naomi blinked, set down her bag. "I told him you'd be okay with it," River said, grinning. Caspian stood slowly. The sitter called, said she had to leave early. I was close by, and River asked. Naomi glanced at the clock. 15 minutes early. She looked at River. "Start packing your things, honey." River's smile dimmed. "But we didn't finish the tower." Naomi didn't raise her voice, didn't explain. River obeyed, quietly, and as he moved toward the back room, the silence left behind was sharp. Caspian looked at her. "I should have asked." "Yes," Naomi said. "You should have." He nodded, hands in his pockets. "You don't trust me. I can't afford to." Caspian didn't argue, didn't bring up father's rights or shared time, didn't ask her to be fair. He just said, "I'm not trying to replace anything. I'm just trying to stay this time." Naomi stared at him. "Words are easy, Caspian." He held her gaze. "Then let me show you something hard." The ride home was quiet. River sat in the back seat, fingers tracing the rim of his sketchpad. Halfway to their apartment, he spoke. He looked sad. Naomi didn't look back. Maybe he was... I didn't like it. Naomi tightened her grip on the wheel. Why not? Because when people are sad and quiet, sometimes they leave. Naomi's throat clenched. She forced her voice steady. "He's learning, baby. People don't always get it right the first time." River looked out the window. "I mess up sometimes too." Naomi blinked. "But you always try again," she said softly. And in the mirror, she saw him nod. That nod wrecked her more than any apology could have. Because River had already done what she hadn't. He'd forgiven Caspian. The next morning, Naomi couldn't focus. She burned her toast, misplaced a client's file, dropped her favorite pen into her coffee mug without realizing. She sat down in the back room of the studio and pulled out a box she hadn't touched in over 3 years. Inside, her oldest sketchbook, the one she kept before River, before it all. She flipped past old layouts, design mock-ups, half-formed ideas, furniture pieces she never built, color schemes she never used. Then she reached a page near the back. No sketches, just words, words she wrote after the bachelor party. Not poetry, not pretty, just true. Don't let a moment ruin your future, but don't let it rewrite your past either. She stared at it for a long time, then closed the book. That weekend, Caspian called, not with a grand idea, not with a dramatic plan, just a simple question. River mentioned he likes space. "Can I take him to the planetarium this weekend?" Naomi was silent. Then, "Only if you come back when you say you will." "I will." It wasn't a performance. It wasn't a promise wrapped in shiny words. It was a test. And, for the first time, Naomi was ready to see if he could pass it. River was already dressed by 6:30 that Saturday morning. He had his little backpack on, a water bottle, a pack of crayons, and a list of constellations scribbled in a childish scrawl. When Caspian arrived on time, exactly on time, River beamed. Naomi watched from the doorway. "You have my number," she said. Caspian nodded. "We'll be back by 3. No detours. No stops. Straight there. Straight back." River ran ahead toward the car. Caspian lingered at the door for half a second longer. "Thank you," he said. Naomi didn't respond. She just nodded, then closed the door. Not because she was shutting him out, but Because some walls are protection, and some are invitations to try again, if the person on the other side is willing to knock more than once. The planetarium was exactly what River hoped for. Dark hallways lit with stars, spinning globes, floating projectors that turned ceilings into galaxies. He walked through the exhibits with wide eyes and small, quiet gasps, pointing at every orbit, every constellation, like they were old friends. Caspian didn't rush him. He let River lead. He answered every question with what he knew and admitted what he didn't. At one point, River tugged his hand and said, "Some people guess when they don't know." Caspian smiled. "I used to. But not with you." River nodded like that made sense. Later, during the dome presentation, River leaned into Caspian's side, head resting lightly against his arm. Caspian didn't move, didn't speak. He just stayed still, shoulders tight at first, then softening. It was the smallest thing. But for Caspian, it felt like everything. Naomi watched the clock that morning like it was wired to her chest. When 3 p.m. hit, she stood. No call yet, no update, no sound. By 3:07, her phone buzzed. A picture. River, grinning beneath a model of Saturn, holding a souvenir cup shaped like a rocket. Caspian's text read, "We're downstairs." She opened the door before he knocked. River ran in. "Mom, it spins." The whole room spun. Naomi smiled, knelt, and hugged him. "Did you thank him?" River turned. "Thank you for the stars." Caspian's face broke into the kind of smile Naomi had never seen on him. "I should be the one thanking you," he said gently. They didn't talk long. Caspian didn't linger. He handed Naomi a small card, River's admission wristband, folded neatly. "I know it's just a band, but it's the first thing he and I ever did together." Naomi took it silently. Her fingers brushed his for half a second. It felt strange, like touching someone you used to know in a different life. That night, Naomi stood in the hallway holding that wristband. She almost tossed it in the drawer. Instead, she taped it to the corner of River's wall, next to one of his drawings. Not centered, not highlighted, but not hidden either. River saw it the next morning. "You kept it?" "Yes," Naomi said. "Firsts matter." He beamed. "Can we have more firsts?" Naomi smoothed his hair. "We'll see." At the next site meeting, Caspian waited for her in the lobby. She almost didn't stop, almost brushed past him like he was just another donor. But then he said, "You don't have to trust me yet, but I want to earn your respect." Naomi turned. "Respect doesn't come from saying the right thing, Caspian." "I know." She studied him. "I don't want apologies anymore. I want patterns." He nodded. "Then I'll stop saying sorry and start proving I've changed." For the next month, he did. No slip-ups, no cancelled meetings, no sudden disappearances. He showed up at every shared time with River, read every email Naomi sent about parenting updates, asked questions, not about Naomi, but about River's world. He wanted to understand what scared him, what calmed him, what his bedtime looked like, what he did when his stomach hurt, or what his favorite bedtime story was. Naomi didn't give everything, but she gave more than she expected she would, because Caspian wasn't perfect, but he was present, and that counted. River noticed the difference too. One evening, while brushing his teeth, he said, "He doesn't talk like he's trying to win." Naomi leaned in the doorway. "What does he talk like?" "Like he's trying not to lose." She blinked. "Lose what?" River wiped toothpaste from his chin. "Me." Naomi's chest tightened. River hopped onto his bed and curled under the sheets, then asked, almost absently, "Did he love you?" Naomi froze. River looked up. "Back then?" Naomi sat on the edge of the bed. "I don't know," she said softly. "I think he didn't know how." River thought for a moment. "Do you think he does now?" Naomi looked down at him. "He's learning." River smiled. "Okay, I can wait." Naomi turned off the light and whispered, "Me too." Caspian didn't try to push boundaries. He didn't show up uninvited, didn't ask to join family routines, didn't hover near Naomi's personal life. But River's trust in him had deepened, and Naomi could see it in the little things. The way River asked to wait a few more minutes at the museum just in case he shows up. The way he started drawing 3 people in his sketches instead of 2. The way his voice got lighter when he said Caspian's name. She wasn't naive. She knew children gave love easier than adults. But she also knew River wasn't careless. He didn't ask for much. So, when he did, it mattered. Naomi started including Caspian on small updates. River's allergy medication, parent-teacher night, what time bedtime was on weekdays versus weekends. She kept it short, simple. Caspian never overreached. He only asked once, "Can I walk him into class one morning?" Naomi took a day to respond, then said yes. It was a Wednesday. Cloudy, cold. Caspian arrived right on time. River wore his red backpack, excited and full of trivia about volcanoes. At the school gate, Naomi stood a few feet back, watching as River led Caspian through the doors. No big moment, no camera-worthy goodbye, but something about it made her blink too fast. Maybe it was the way Caspian knelt to tie River's shoe. Maybe it was the way River high-fived him at the classroom door. Or maybe it was the look Caspian gave her when he walked back outside. Not proud, not smug, grateful. A few nights later, Naomi had a dream. She was standing at the rooftop again, the one from 5 years ago. Only this time, she wasn't alone. River stood beside her, holding her hand. Caspian was at a distance, watching but not approaching. She turned to ask River something, but he let go of her hand and walked over to Caspian. She wanted to call out, to pull him back, but she didn't. She just stood there, heart pounding, as River took Caspian's hand without hesitation. She woke up breathless and couldn't go back to sleep. The following Saturday, Caspian asked if he could take River to the art museum. Naomi hesitated. It wasn't about the time. It wasn't even about safety. It was about the fact that River had started drawing more than just buildings. He'd started drawing families. 3 figures. 1 tall, 1 mid-height, 1 small. No faces, but all of them standing close together. And always, always, on solid ground. He was building a story in his mind. And Naomi was terrified of what would happen if the ending didn't match. But she nodded. Yes, you can take him. They left at 10. At noon, Naomi's phone buzzed. A photo of River, with a smudge of paint on his cheek, proudly holding a program. The caption read, he said, "This is what it feels like when you're not invisible." Naomi stared at the message for a long time, then turned off her phone and cried. That night, Caspian returned River with a quiet look on his face. He didn't linger on the porch, didn't ask to come inside. But just as Naomi turned to go, he said, "I want to do this the right way." She turned. "No pressure, no sudden changes," he continued. "But I want to tell him, from me, who I am." Naomi crossed her arms. "He already knows." Caspian shook his head. "He knows what he's been given. He deserves to hear it from the person who gave it to him." Naomi studied him for a long time, then said, "Tomorrow, you can come for dinner." Caspian blinked, then nodded. "Thank you." She didn't say "you're welcome." She just closed the door gently behind her and leaned against it, heart racing, because there was no going back now. Sunday came with slow skies and light wind. River helped set the table without asking. Naomi made pasta, kept things simple. Caspian arrived exactly at 6. River opened the door before Naomi could stop him. "You're early." Caspian smiled. Only by a little. They sat, ate, laughed. Naomi watched them, one watching the other, both learning how to share a world they didn't build together. After dinner, she cleared the plates. River curled up on the couch with a pillow, half asleep. Caspian looked at Naomi once, for permission. She gave a small nod. He knelt beside the couch. "River," he said gently, "there's something I want to tell you." River opened one eye. "I'm your dad." Silence. Then, "I know." Caspian froze. River sat up. You didn't say it before. But I knew. Caspian's voice cracked. Why didn't you say anything? Because sometimes grown-ups wait until they're ready, River said. Naomi's hand went to her mouth. River turned to her. You knew he was waiting too. She nodded, eyes glassy. Caspian took River's hand. I'm going to do this right. One day at a time. River smiled. Okay. But you have to show up every time. Not just the fun ones. Caspian let out a quiet laugh. Deal. And in that living room, with no fireworks, no grand moment, no big speech, something real began. Caspian didn't celebrate being called Dad. He didn't buy balloons, didn't schedule a party or post a picture. He didn't even tell Naomi how much that moment meant to him. He just came back the next day. Then the next. Not with gifts, not with grand gestures, with breakfast runs, school pickups, homework help, storybooks. He started learning River's rhythms. That he got cranky when his socks felt too tight. That he didn't like orange markers. That he asked to hold your hand when crossing busy streets, even though he'd insist he was too old for it. Naomi watched all of it from the background, not interfering, not encouraging either, just observing. Because showing up once was easy, but consistency, that was where people either stayed or disappeared. The first real test came on a rainy Thursday. River had a cold, mild fever, runny nose, no appetite. Naomi had a meeting she couldn't cancel, a walk-through with 2 investors who were flying in from Dallas. She hesitated before texting Caspian. She'd never asked him to take care of River alone before. She told herself it was too soon. But then she sent it anyway. River's sick. I have a client walk-through in 90 minutes. Can you come? Caspian replied within 2 minutes. I'm on my way. He arrived 15 minutes later, wet from the rain. No umbrella. River was curled up on the couch, tissues everywhere. Caspian knelt beside him. Hey, kid. Want some soup? River looked up, glassy-eyed. Only if it has those twisty noodles. I'll make sure it does. Naomi didn't say much, just handed him the list of medications and rushed to work. When she came back 4 hours later, she found River asleep in his bed, and Caspian in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, wiping down the counter. The soup didn't cure him, he said quietly, but I think the nap helped. Naomi nodded. Her throat tightened. But she didn't say thank you. She just said, you did good. And Caspian smiled like it was the only reward he needed. The next week, Naomi got a call from River's school. Family Day was coming up. Each student was supposed to draw a picture of their family and present it to the class. Naomi picked River up that afternoon and asked him if he wanted help. He shook his head. I already started. Can I see it? River hesitated, then handed her the folded paper. 3 figures, 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small, all smiling, all holding hands. The tall one had stubble, the medium one had earrings, the small one wore red shoes, just like River's favorite pair. I put you on the left because you're the strongest, he said. Naomi blinked hard. And the middle? He's learning, River whispered. But he's showing up. Naomi didn't speak. She just wrapped him in her arms and held him for a long time. Later that night, after River went to bed, Naomi texted Caspian a photo of the drawing. No caption, no emojis, just the image. Caspian replied 10 minutes later, "Thank you for not erasing me." She stared at those words for a while, then turned off her phone, not because she didn't have something to say, but because she wasn't sure what it was yet. The next week moved differently, not faster, not louder, but heavier in a way Naomi didn't expect. Caspian's presence was no longer occasional. It was dependable. He picked River up on Tuesdays and Fridays, stayed for dinner once, helped with a math project that made Naomi want to throw the workbook across the room. He didn't pretend to know everything, but he was learning, and River noticed. Naomi noticed too. One evening, she walked into the living room and saw them both lying on the rug. River was explaining how cities are like puzzles. You have to put the people where they belong, otherwise it gets noisy. Caspian nodded like it was the most brilliant thing he'd ever heard. You know what else is important? River added. What? Caspian asked. Not disappearing. Naomi's breath caught. Caspian didn't blink. That's the most important part, I think. On Saturday, Caspian took River to the botanical gardens. Naomi stayed behind, choosing to give space rather than hover. That afternoon, they returned with pictures of koi ponds and a small potted succulent river named Brutus. Caspian explained he picked the only one with 3 little arms, said it felt like us. Naomi said nothing, but she placed Brutus on the kitchen window ledge. That evening, River asked a question that Naomi wasn't ready for. Can he come with us on my birthday trip? Naomi had planned a quiet weekend getaway to a cabin just outside Lake Geneva. Nothing big, just them, no city noise, no internet, no responsibilities. River had been counting down for weeks. Now he wanted to make room for Caspian. Naomi hesitated. That's our tradition, she said gently. River nodded. But traditions can grow, right? Naomi looked at him, then at the potted plant. 3 arms, 1 small. She said, let me think about it. River smiled. You always do. The next morning, Caspian stopped by to drop off a jacket River left in his car. Naomi opened the door in sweats and an oversized t-shirt, hair messy, eyes tired. Caspian didn't comment. He handed over the jacket and said, Thanks for trusting me with him. Naomi nodded. He trusts you. I'm catching up. Caspian gave a slow smile. I can wait. She studied him. You used to be in a hurry. I used to be stupid. Naomi didn't laugh, but the corners of her mouth shifted. Then she said, We'll be gone for his birthday weekend. He didn't look disappointed. Thanks for telling me. She hesitated, then added, He wants you there. Caspian looked at her carefully. And you? Naomi held his gaze. I'm thinking, what would you do? If someone who hurt you started showing up, quietly, consistently, would you let them in again? Would you let your child believe in their change? Or would you keep the door shut, even if the knock became gentle? Tell me in the comments. And if this story moved you, make sure to like, share and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories. Sometimes the hardest part isn't forgiving someone. It's trusting that they won't make you regret it. Caspian didn't ask again about the birthday trip. He didn't try to charm his way into it, didn't drop hints or use River as leverage. He simply returned to the rhythm Naomi had allowed. Pickups, drop-offs, homework, patience. Naomi noticed it. The discipline in his new choices. How he no longer made promises he couldn't keep. How he didn't say things just to be heard. How his presence had become something River expected, not hoped for. That was a first. And Naomi didn't take that lightly. They were sitting on the bench outside River's school one afternoon, waiting for dismissal. Caspian had offered to come along, and Naomi didn't say no. He held a folded piece of paper. After a few minutes of silence, he handed it to her. What's this? She asked. My therapy notes. From last week. Naomi looked at him sharply. You don't owe me your private work. I know, he said. But I want you to see the version of me you never met. She opened the paper slowly. It wasn't dramatic. It was messy handwriting. Bullet points, honesty scribbled in raw ink. I never learned how to stay. I only learned how to perform. When people got too close, I disappeared. Because if they didn't see me clearly, they couldn't leave. Naomi blinked, heart pulling tight in her chest. This is the version I wanted to bring to our son, he added. Not the one who left. Naomi folded the paper again, then said, He'll see that. If you keep showing up. Caspian nodded. I'm not rushing anything, he said. Not even us. I know where I failed. I just want to be someone River never has to unlearn. Naomi looked at him for a long time. I want that too, she said softly. For both of us. River came out minutes later, smiling as always. He ran toward them and slipped his small hand into both of theirs without thinking. And neither of them let go. That weekend, Naomi woke up to find River sitting on the floor, organizing his drawings into 2 stacks. She watched from the hallway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Sorting." "Sorting what?" "The before and after ones." She walked over and sat down beside him. He showed her. The before stack was full of lonely buildings, single figures, blank windows. The after stack was different, warm lights in the windows, people standing on rooftops together. 3 figures, always 3. "These ones feel better," he said. "They look like home." Naomi nodded, her throat tight. He looked at her. "Is it okay if home is more than just us now?" She didn't speak right away, then pulled him into her arms. "It's okay," she whispered. "As long as it stays safe." River leaned into her chest. "It feels safe." Naomi closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, she believed him. Naomi wasn't a woman who forgave easily. She forgave slowly, deliberately, like someone double-checking the locks on a door that once swung open when it should have stayed closed. But as she watched River flourish under the rhythm of shared care, something inside her began to soften. It wasn't about love. It was about accountability, about peace, about the weight that lifted when you stopped guarding the same wound every single day. So she called Caspian one night after River fell asleep. "Can you come by tomorrow after dinner?" she asked. There was a pause, then a quiet yes. She didn't tell him why, but he showed up on time, alone, no flowers, no expectations, just silence and a coat still damp from the cold. She let him in. They sat at the dining table, no food, no music, just 2 people on opposite sides of an unfinished conversation. Naomi looked down at her hands. "I want to talk about that night." Caspian didn't flinch. "I've replayed it 100 times, he said. "And every version ends with me walking away from something I didn't understand." Naomi nodded. "You kissed me like you needed truth," she said. "And then you married someone else the next morning." His jaw tensed. "I told myself it was already too late. The wedding wasn't something I chose with heart. It was mapped out, expected, signed, sealed." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "And so was the silence afterward." He winced. "No, that was me. Not wanting to deal with what that night meant." Naomi stared at him. "It meant a child. I didn't know. You didn't ask." Caspian closed his eyes. "I was selfish and scared. I'd never connected with someone who didn't want anything from me. I didn't know how to carry that without breaking it." Naomi exhaled slowly. "You didn't break me, Caspian. You just left me to put myself back together alone." He looked at her. "I'm sorry." "For the kiss?" she asked. "Or the silence? For pretending you didn't matter?" Naomi nodded, once. "That's the one." They sat there in the quiet. No tears, no shouting, no dramatic music. Just truth, heavy, quiet, uncomfortable. Then Caspian said, "If you ever need space, distance, I'll respect it. But I'm not stepping out of River's life again." Naomi met his eyes. "I wouldn't let you." She stood. He stood with her. And for the first time, there was no tension between them. No heat. No ache. Just understanding. They weren't who they were 5 years ago, and maybe that was the point. A few days later, River asked if Caspian could come with them to the winter carnival. Naomi said yes. It wasn't a test anymore. It was just life. They walked through the crowds with cocoa in hand, shared one oversized funnel cake, and watched River scream on the carousel with joy Naomi hadn't seen in years. Caspian stood beside her at the railing. "This," he said quietly, "is worth every hard conversation." Naomi nodded. "Just don't forget that when it gets harder again." "I won't." She looked at him. "I'm not waiting for you to prove something, Caspian. I know. I'm watching to see if you unlearn what broke you." He smiled, not cocky, not performative, genuine. "I already started. Would you forgive someone who hurt you, not with cruelty, but with silence? Would you believe in a second chance after 5 years of absence, if they came back with presents? Tell me in the comments. And if you're still here with me, like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories. Because some stories don't ask to be rewritten. They ask to be continued, this time the right way. Snow fell steadily the morning of River's 6th birthday. Not the heavy, angry kind. The soft, quiet kind that blanketed the city like it was protecting something. River sat by the window in his pajamas, knees pulled to his chest, watching the flakes drift past with wonder. Naomi stood in the kitchen, folding his new hoodie, the one he begged for with the planets on the sleeves. Her phone buzzed. A message from Caspian. "Good morning. Still on for this evening? I'll bring the cake like we discussed." She typed back quickly. "Yes, just us. Nothing loud. He wants calm this year." Caspian replied with a thumbs up and a photo of the cake receipt. Vanilla, chocolate swirl, blue frosting, no candles. River had been clear about that. Naomi smiled to herself. He was learning. The birthday evening felt warm in a way Naomi hadn't expected. They didn't do balloons, no loud music, just dinner, cake, and 3 people sitting at a small table like they had always belonged there. River opened his gifts slowly, carefully peeling each strip of tape. Naomi gave him a sketchbook made of recycled paper and a new set of colored pencils. Caspian gave him a hardbound book titled Cities from the Sky. River opened to a random page and lit up. "This is Dubai," he said confidently. Caspian looked impressed. "You're right. I want to build something like this," River whispered. Naomi leaned in. "Maybe you will." River's face lit up with something purer than joy, certainty. After dinner, Naomi and Caspian washed dishes while River set up his models in the living room. They didn't speak for a while. Then Caspian said, "This is the first time I've ever done a birthday that felt like something more than noise." Naomi glanced at him. "It was never about noise." He nodded. "I wish I could have seen his first one." Naomi dried her hands. "You couldn't have handled it back then." Caspian accepted that without defense. "I know." Naomi folded the towel carefully. "But you're here now." That small sentence, spoken quietly without ceremony, was the closest thing to permission she had ever given him. He didn't take it for granted. Later that night, after River fell asleep with his new book beside him, Caspian stood at the door, holding his coat but not moving. Naomi stood across from him, arms crossed but relaxed. "I don't know what this is supposed to look like next," he said. Naomi shook her head. "It's not supposed to look like anything. It's supposed to feel like something." "And how does it feel?" She thought for a second. "Like the beginning of a stable chapter." Caspian nodded. "That's the only kind I want to write now." He turned to leave, but Naomi called after him softly. "Thank you for not quitting." He turned, eyes soft. "I quit everything else before. I'm not quitting this." The next morning, River climbed into Naomi's bed before sunrise. She pretended to still be asleep. He whispered, "Do you think he'll still come next week?" Naomi opened her eyes. "Yes," she said. "He will." River smiled. "Good." Then he snuggled into her side like he used to when he was smaller. Naomi wrapped an arm around him, closed her eyes again, and let the quiet settle in. Not the painful kind, the peaceful kind. Naomi woke to the sound of rain tapping the windows. Not a storm, just a soft, steady rhythm, the kind that made the world feel slower and safer. She wrapped herself in a robe, padded barefoot to the kitchen, and poured a cup of herbal tea. She didn't rush. She didn't check her phone. She just stood at the window, mug in hand, watching the grey morning unfold. It had been 4 months since Caspian knocked on her emotional walls. 4 months of cautious rebuilding, of learning how to speak with intention, of watching a man become honest, not loud. And now, as the rain whispered against the glass, she knew something had shifted. Not in him, in her. She didn't feel afraid of love anymore. Not because she was ready to fall again, but because she finally believed she could walk away again if it ever betrayed her. And that belief, that was power. Later that day, she was at the studio finishing up a custom order when her phone buzzed. "Caspian, can I pick River up today? I got out early." She responded quickly. "Sure, he'll be excited." He texted back a few seconds later. "Thank you. for still letting me show up." Naomi stared at the message, then whispered, "You're the one doing the work now." That evening, when they walked in, River carried a model kit under his arm, bubbling with excitement. "It's a rotating building. He got it for us to build together." Naomi knelt and helped him with his jacket. "Did you say thank you?" "Of course," River said proudly. Then he looked at her and asked, "Can we make space for it on the shelf next to the ones you helped me build?" Naomi paused, then nodded. "Yes, you can make space." Caspian stood a few feet back, holding a bag of takeout and a slightly awkward smile. "Thought I'd bring dinner. I know Thursdays are your long day." Naomi reached for the bag. "You remembered. I write things down now," he said with a small shrug. They ate together without tension. River talked about school. Naomi listened while organizing design files. Caspian helped with a science worksheet that involved shadows and angles. It wasn't perfect, but it was whole. After River went to bed, Naomi stood by the window again. Caspian came to stand beside her. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't know you could miss something you never had until I met him." Naomi looked at him. "And now?" Caspian looked down. "Now I don't want to miss another thing." She nodded, still quiet, still unsure what came next, but for once not scared to find out. River's school was hosting a family showcase. Each student had drawn a picture, built a small model, or written something about the idea of home. Naomi had known about it for weeks. She planned to go, of course, but she hadn't planned for Caspian to be invited. That decision didn't come from her. It came from River. The night before the showcase, as Naomi helped him finish his drawing, a tall building with 3 smiling figures on the rooftop, he looked up at her and asked, "Do you think he'll come if I ask?" Naomi swallowed. "You want him there?" River nodded without hesitation. "It's not about who used to be there," he said. "It's about who's here now." Naomi blinked hard to stop the sting behind her eyes. She reached for her phone and handed it to River. "Then you ask him." Caspian didn't answer right away, but the text message was clear. "River, will you come to the showcase tomorrow? I'll be showing my tallest model. It's us on top of the building. You, me, and Mom." Caspian replied 5 minutes later, "I wouldn't miss it for anything." The next afternoon, Naomi stood near River's art table as other parents milled around with paper cups and quiet pride. The classroom smelled like crayons, apple juice, and glue sticks. River bounced on his feet, watching the door every few minutes. Then, he stopped bouncing. Naomi followed his gaze. Caspian had entered, dressed simply, not in CEO grey, but a soft navy sweater and dark jeans. No watch, no entourage, just him. He walked straight to River. "Hey," he said softly. "I'm here." River threw his arms around his waist. Naomi didn't move, but she felt the shift. In the room, in her chest. When it was River's turn to present, he pointed proudly at his model. "This is my building," he said. "It has a rooftop garden and glass windows all around. I drew me and my parents on top." The teacher smiled. "And what does home mean to you?" River looked at Naomi, then Caspian. Then he said, "It means nobody has to ask if they belong. They just know." The room went still. Even a few parents looked away, blinking quickly. Naomi felt her throat tighten. Caspian's hand gently touched her lower back. Just once. Not to claim, not to push. Just to steady. After the event, they walked together through the hallway toward the exit. Naomi carried River's model. Caspian carried his drawings. Outside, as the late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the sidewalk, River ran ahead, pretending to be a plane. Naomi turned to Caspian. "You were good in there." "I didn't say much. You didn't need to." Caspian smiled softly. "Neither did you." Naomi held his gaze. "He's always watching." "I know." They stood like that for a moment. Strangers no longer, parents always. That evening, after the school showcase, Naomi sat on her couch alone. River was already asleep. curled around a pillow with his model on the nightstand. The apartment was still, the kind of stillness that doesn't feel lonely, just full. She looked down at her phone. There was a message from Caspian. "Thank you for today, not just for letting me be there, but for raising him into that kind of boy." She stared at it for a long time, then typed slowly. "I didn't do it alone. I just did it first." The next morning, Caspian surprised them with breakfast from River's favorite diner. He didn't knock like a man who belonged. He rang the bell like a man still earning space. Naomi opened the door, still in her robe. "I figured it was my turn to bring the pancakes," he said, lifting the paper bag. She stepped aside without a word. He laid out breakfast on the kitchen counter, plating food quietly while River talked non-stop about the showcase. Naomi poured herself coffee. "You keep doing things," she said after a minute. Caspian looked up. "Should I stop?" She shook her head. "No. I'm just not used to it." Later, River was on the floor building a new structure with magnetic blocks, humming under his breath. Naomi sat on the couch. Caspian sat across from her. She said, "You know what scares me?" He waited. "That I'll start to need this, rely on this, and then you'll disappear." Caspian's voice was steady. "I did that once, and I live with that." She looked at him, brows drawn. "But now," he said, "I'd rather be predictable than impressive." That stopped her, because impressive had failed her. But predictable. Predictable meant River would never again wait for someone who never planned to stay. That weekend, they went grocery shopping together. It wasn't dramatic. No fights. No stares. No declarations. Just Caspian reading labels, River choosing cereal, Naomi comparing coupons. And when they checked out, Caspian paid. Quietly. Naomi didn't argue, because she was learning too. At home, she set up lunch while River colored at the kitchen table. Caspian took out the trash without being asked. Naomi watched from the sink and thought to herself, "This is the kind of man I would have trusted years ago." And now, she didn't trust him because of what he said. She trusted him because he no longer asked to be trusted. He just showed up. Later that night, she stood on the balcony. Caspian joined her. River was asleep again, safe, full, and content. Caspian leaned on the railing beside her. "I keep thinking about what River said," he murmured. "That home means not needing to ask if you belong." Naomi said nothing. Then Caspian turned to her. "Do you think I'll ever belong?" Naomi looked at him. Her eyes didn't flinch. "That's not my question to answer anymore. That's his." Caspian nodded. "I hope one day both your answers are the same." The night before River's art exhibit, Naomi found him asleep on the couch, sketchbook still in his lap, crayons scattered like confetti. She smiled, lifted him gently, and carried him to bed. On the way, he stirred, half awake. "Will he come tomorrow?" he mumbled. Naomi paused in the hallway. "He said he would." River nodded into her shoulder. "Okay. I believe him." She tucked him in, switched on the galaxy lamp, closed the door quietly. But she stayed there for a long time, staring at the wood grain, hand resting on the handle. Not because she didn't believe Caspian would come, but because for the first time in years, she believed it might matter if he did. The next day, the art gallery inside the children's hospital opened its doors at noon. Naomi arrived early, wearing a soft navy dress, and Flats River picked himself. She helped set up the display board with his drawings, skyscrapers, rooftop gardens, a bridge shaped like a smile. Each piece had a small card beside it. One said, "This one is about second chances." She hadn't noticed he wrote that until she pinned it up. Her heart squeezed. Then she felt it. Presence behind her. She turned. Caspian stood there. No coat, no tie. Just a black sweater and soft eyes. "Hey," he said quietly. She nodded. "You came early." "I didn't want to miss anything." River arrived soon after with his teacher, bouncing with energy and pride. When he spotted Caspian, he ran straight to him. "You made it." "Of course I did," Caspian said, scooping him up with one arm. Naomi watched the moment unfold like a photo she never thought she'd see in real life. River showing Caspian his work. Caspian asking questions like he'd always been there. Naomi no longer needed to explain who they were. They just were. During the showcase, a photographer from the hospital's media team approached them. "We're doing a spotlight feature on families behind the art. Would you three mind?" Naomi hesitated. Caspian looked at her, waiting. River, already posing, beamed. "Mom? Please." She took a breath, then stepped beside Caspian, hand brushing his lightly. The camera clicked. Once, twice. The moment captured something bigger than a photo. It captured peace. After the event, Caspian walked Naomi and River to their car. They buckled River in, who immediately started listing ideas for his next building, this one with a roof that opened to the stars. Caspian closed the door, turned to Naomi. "You look tired." She smiled. "That's what happens when you raise a visionary." He laughed softly. Then his voice dropped. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "When he calls me Dad, does that feel okay?" Naomi looked at him for a long moment. "Do you love him?" "With everything," he said without pause. "Then yes," she said. "It feels right." Caspian didn't propose. He didn't bring a ring. He didn't rush. He stayed. Naomi didn't ask for a timeline. She didn't give one either. They moved carefully. A shared meal here. A school event there. Therapy sessions for co-parenting. Then one, quietly for themselves. Not to repair something broken, but to understand what they'd built. Not a romantic story, but a human one. Weeks passed. Caspian began walking River to school on Mondays. He learned how River liked his sandwiches cut. Triangles, never squares. He kept a second toothbrush in the apartment, though he never assumed he'd use it. Naomi started setting a second mug out for coffee without thinking. That was the shift. No drama, just space being made, and kept. One evening, River fell asleep during movie night. Naomi went to tuck him in. Caspian stayed on the couch, eyes on the paused screen, blanket still folded neatly beside him. When she returned, she stood in the doorway. "I don't know when it stopped hurting," she said. Caspian looked up. "But it did," she continued. "It stopped being about punishment." He nodded, not rushing to fill the silence. "I used to want you to hurt like I did," she admitted. "But now, I just want peace." "You deserve it," he said softly. She stepped forward, took the blanket, and sat beside him. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. Some closeness doesn't come from bodies. It comes from breathing the same air and finally exhaling. Spring arrived early that year. River's drawings changed again. Brighter skies, bridges connecting people, homes with wide doors. One picture showed 3 figures on a rooftop. River, Caspian, Naomi. They were holding hands. The caption, "Our family, not perfect, but safe." Naomi taped it to the fridge, then stood in front of it for a long time. Later that evening, she handed Caspian a spare key. He took it without words, just pressed it to his heart. Naomi didn't say what it meant. She didn't need to. Some doors don't need knocking anymore. They only need the right person willing to stay long enough to earn their way back in. Did this story move you? Do second chances belong to those who ask, or those who prove? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you felt this journey, if it reminded you of something you lost, something you rebuilt, or something you hope to find, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories. Because not every love story starts perfectly, but the ones worth telling, they end with presence. They end with choice. They end with staying. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next story.